ready to start our press conference. My name is René, I'm the press officer. I would like to welcome to the press conference of the European Union Election Observation Mission in Liberia. Very happy to see all of you that you had the time to attend our press conference. On the high table here, I want to start to introduce my colleagues. Is the EUBOM Chief Observer Maria Renner. In the middle, next to her is the Deputy Chief Observer Alessandro Razziali. Only a few words to the procedure of this press conference. You will get a presentation of our preliminary findings. After this, you will have the chance to ask questions. And after that, I will deliver hard copies of the press release we have prepared for you, and also a hard copy of the preliminary statement. When everything is done, we are pleased to invite you to the terrace to a small reception. In the afternoon later, I will send all the documents, press release and the preliminary statement by email to all of you, if I have your email addresses. So now I want to give the floor to our Chief Observer, European Union Election Observation Mission in Liberia, Maria Renner.
Thank you, René. Thank you everybody for being here. I know that for some of you it is a little bit tired because you attend a lot of press conferences, so I will try to be shorter as possible. So I'm not going to read the preliminary statements. As René said, you will receive this, and I really encourage you to read this preliminary statement, because you will find a lot of information that I'm not going to read, because it will be perhaps a little bit boring for people being here. So I encourage you to read it, to have all this information. So, as the request, at the request of the Liberian authority, the EU, and I'm representing the observation mission from the European Union, has decided to deploy an electoral observation mission to Liberia, a very big one. That shows that for European Union, accompanying the political transition here through the democratic electoral process in Liberia is a real priority. It can, if successful, be a great factor of stability for the Liberians, and this is the first objective that we have. But also, it can be seen as a real success for the ECOWAS region and in Africa in general. Our electoral observation mission of more than 81 people, I said it's a big one, 81 people, they are here in Liberia. Long-term observer, core team, short-term observer have gathered information from all the different counties from all the region and for more than 1 month. What we can say at this stage? First, we can say that Liberia has the tool to manage a political transition in a democratic way, whatever it is through its national legal framework and/or its international commitments, but also the establishment of institutions such the National Electoral Commission or the Supreme Court. Second, the European Electoral Observation Mission formulate different range of remarks. First, remarks on the legal framework itself, such as certain inconsistencies that we can have, for example, in the requirement to stand as candidate here in Liberia, or between some commitments to respect international standards, such as the principle of non-discrimination and laws to prohibit voting for people according to their origin. We also have remarks on the application of this legal framework, because it's important to have a legal framework, but it's also important to enforce it. So we have remarks such as the control of campaign funding, little control for the moment in Liberia, or the presence of at least 30% of women in the list. Of course, there is this will of having women on political lists, But we have seen that it's not so easy to have these women on this list. Or also on the legal framework for participation in the national media. We also have remarks on the elaboration of the register of voters, or the fact that the place of registration of the voters could be different than the place of voting, that can lead to uncertainties for voters during the election days. We also have some remarks on the organization level to the EU election observation mission. We make also some remarks on this. We all know that Liberia is a country with well-known characteristic, the weather characteristic, infrastructure, or geographically difficult country, which make the organization of the electoral process fairly complex. It was found that the late arrival of equipment in some places was a source of difficulties for NEC staff. For example, late opening in some polling station. Also, late training of staff also made their work difficult in organizing polling stations, both at the opening and closure, with non-uniform rules applied. Unclear information on the assignment of voters to specific polling stations also made the queuing phenomenon more important. Often, people had to queue several polling stations before arriving at their polling station, and sometimes we have seen people quit the polling station without voting. It can therefore be said that according to our observer, things went well on election day. The will, the commitment, and the determination of Liberian citizens and staff played a major role in this election day. However, according to the European mission, improvement will be needed. Our interim report sets the difficulties in countries, and our final report, which will come to the end of the entire electoral process, will make a number of recommendations with a view to improving the situation in the future. I will conclude by saying that the process of the first round has not been completed, and that in order to the final result to be credible, the Liberian authorities will have to show the greatest transparency regarding the handling and the result for the polling station until the validation through tallying centers, and that potential complaints are handled with the utmost impartiality. It is only in this context that the Liberian people will have confidence in their institution and in their country in order to face the mainly challenges that they have to face after the election. If I can sum up, just to give you some information in this report, I can sum up with the first bullet points that we have in the report. And he said, the first post-conflict elections entirely managed by the Liberians are the culmination of the transition process for the country. The elections are governed by a legal framework broadly in line with international standards, a pluralistic political and media landscape, a strong commitment from civil society and population. The election process has evident scope for improvement in its law, procedures, and implementation by institutions during an intense campaign period that evidenced imbalanced playing field for candidates in terms of access to resources, especially for female contestants. All parties and candidates showed commitment to democratic rules. The democratic capital built so far should be consolidated by transparent and impartial tallying and complaints processes. thank you for being here, and I'm ready for your question.
Thank you, Maria.
I would want to know your initial assessment of the credibility of Tuesday's elections. And elect Chairman Councillor Monrovia did say yesterday at a press conference that there were irregularities, and he apologized over those irregularities. What does that mean for you?
Okay. My name is Jackson Clean and I work for the New Republic newspaper. With the number of difficulties you highlighted, could this have an impact on the election result?
Can you repeat your...
With the number of difficulties you highlighted during the process, do you think this might have an impact on election result?
Jan Philipp Scholz, Deutsche Welle, Germany's international broadcaster. There are a lot of fake news out at the moment in social media that the next president is George Weah. Do you think this has a negative impact on the election process?
Okay, I will answer the last question because if there are fake news, I don't answer to fake news. So this is my answer. To the first one, when you see that NEC has done a press conference, NEC is the authority for this country. So NEC is working with the constitutional situation of this country. So it is NEC to do his job here in the country. So if there are irregularities, NEC has to take these irregularities and to have some answers on this. We are not here to say that it's right or not right. NEC is the authority of the country. We are not the authority of the country. We are observer, international observer, and we work as international observer. We are not authority of the country. And the last one is difficulties. I think that when you are in an electoral process, there is no country without difficulties. So it will be a miracle if it is the case here in Liberia. So there are difficulties. We showed these difficulties, and for us it's important to say that there are difficulties, and when there are difficulties, there is a room for improvement, and it is what we will do with our final report to say how it is possible to improve the process of the election system here in the country.
You said the elections were in line with international standards, but there was an imbalanced playing field for candidates, especially women. I find that statement to be contradictory. Can you maybe give some highlights?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Clark. I work for the group Jeune Afrique, the Africa report in Paris, with specific reference to the Kenya's recent election wherein election results were contested at the Supreme Court. Does that change the perspective of the EU and make you more cautious of the presentation of Liberia's election results? Thank you.
Okay, when it comes for women, in fact, we have seen that all the system gives little place for women in the electoral system. It is not an inconsistency for international commitment coming from Liberia. For example, when they said that they wanted to have 30% of women in the list of candidates, they said that it was difficult to find this 30% of women in the list of candidates. And so what we said is there is improvement, possible improvement, to try to have more women in this country and to commit them in politics. So we have to try to help because there are some countries that have some laws that make it more easier for women. For example, for the access to finance, for example. How is it possible to a woman to guarantee her capacity to finance a campaign, for example? So it is something that we have to work with. It is not only in Liberia. I think it's difficult for women, everybody in the world, not only here in Liberia. I must say that even in my country, I'm coming from a very little country in Belgium, and it is not so easy to get women in politics. So if we can help that, not just because we said that we are feminist, but we said that women are representing more than half of the population, and we think that it is normal that women can participate to political systems. So we have to try to encourage and to support women. But there is no inconsistency with international framework, legal framework on this. It is just to see that it is difficult and perhaps sometimes more difficult for women in this country. What about Kenya? I think it's difficult to compare two people. Kenya is not Liberia and Liberia is not Kenya. The electoral process is different. The way they are working in Liberia with the IT technological information system, it's different, totally different that we have seen here in Liberia. So it is not because of the situation of Kenya that we are more or less cautious here in Liberia. So Kenya, we as observer in Kenya, we can observe what is observable. I don't know if it in English, what we can see. We can't see what is in a computer machine, what is the code in the informatical system. And this needs an inquiry. And we are not in the situation to make that. So it is not the situation here in Liberia. So I don't want to compare. In French, we said comparer des poires et des pommes, compare pears and apple. So it's totally a different system, and so I don't want to compare the two systems.
Yes, Stephen said my first question was not answered. I asked about the credibility of the elections, and I just wanted to give you a comment on that.
So,
my name is Manny Moreno, right for the Analyst newspaper. According to your own observation so far, are there rooms for improvement for the National Elections Commission? What would a suggestion be in terms of how we should proceed?
yeah. For the last question, yeah, it's what I said. There is always room for improvement. And we will wait the end of the process to make some consideration about that and how it is possible to improve the system, even in the NEC situation. How, for example, to train more people, staff coming from the NEC, and to make them easier to do their job in the polling station, for example, or in the tallying center. So I think, yes, there is room for improvement, and we will do some recommendation in the final report coming from the European Observation Mission. As far as the first question, I thought I answered on this. So we are not, and I say that, we are not here to validate the election. You in Liberia have national authorities to do so. And by the end of the process, we are not at the end of the process. So what we can say is we are observer. We are not covering the 5,000 electoral polling station. We observe some, and quite a few. We have information coming from all the country, and we are going to make recommendations. So we are not here to say we validate or not this electoral process. We want to improve and to help Liberians to have their rights in democracy.
Thank you very much. If there are no more questions, thank you very much, Maria Arena, our chief observer, and also thank you, Alessandro, being here. Thank you for coming. I have the hard copies of our preliminary statement here, if you want one. Also the press releases here. Outside, we have prepared a small reception for you. Thank you very much.